Hello and welcome to UCLA Connections, Conversations to Build Community and Foster Resilience. I'm Annamarie Francois, Director of Center X at the UCLA Graduate School of Education and Information Studies, where we work at the intersection of research and practice to transform public schooling to create a more just, equitable, and humane society. I will serve as your host for today's conversation. So UCLA Connections is all about building community and fostering resilience. And community and resilience have taken on new meanings for many parents of school-aged children, struggling to navigate the new normal of schooling as a result of the current pandemic. Today, we will explore how parents can successfully cope with remote learning, not master it, but to cope with remote learning. Before we get started, I'd like to thank you all for the questions you submitted when registering. We've attempted to weave many of them into our conversation, which will be available to view at ucla.edu/connections. So there's much ground to cover in 30 minutes, so let's get started. I am thrilled to be here today with two of my colleagues from Center X, Erin Powers, who leads our National Board for Professional Teaching Standards Initiative, and Daniel Diaz, who heads the UCLA History and Geography Project. Daniel and Erin are in a not so unique position because there are many K-12 teachers out there who are navigating this space. But Daniel and Erin are both not only educators with deep knowledge and expertise in what constitutes high quality teaching and learning, but are also parents of school-aged children. And like so many, they find themselves at home with their kids, trying to balance the demands of work with supporting their kids who are at home going to school online. This summer, in an effort to help parents support learning for their children, Daniel and Erin wrote an informative and encouraging opinion piece in the Los Angeles Times, offering some guidance and reassurance to parents who find themselves helping their children navigate learning amid the pandemic. So today, we're going to talk with them about the ideas in that article, what's changed since then, and maybe some other ideas and suggestions for parents. So, Daniel and Erin, can you join me? Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Erin. Hi, Annamarie.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel. It's good to see you both today. So let me just start by asking a very simple question. A lot has changed since August when you wrote the article. How are y'all doing?
There's a pause there. Hanging in there has become kind of my standard response to that question. Either that or one foot in front of the other or taking it day by day.
Absolutely. Daniel, how you doing?
Same. I'm really day to day like everyone. I'm still figuring this out. And I'm realizing that it's important for me to remain flexible because things are shifting and changing every day. So there's no real figuring it out. It's more about being flexible. The situation in my house can be a bit challenging. My wife's a district administrator and she has to go into work every day. So I'm trying to balance supporting my first grader and my third grader and also work demands and meetings. And so those oftentimes conflict and bump up against each other. So I'm happy that we're going to have this conversation today to talk about what we can do to cope with some of these things and having like limited bandwidth with attention and time.
So I see that one of the adjustments that you made is that you have turned your daughter's room into your home office.
Yeah, I have, and they're not too happy about it. Although my oldest Ava is now okay with this because she uses this room in the morning for her third grade class. And so I go and work in the kitchen with my youngest Lucia, who's in first grade and needs more support because she struggles like a lot of us to sit in front of a Zoom meeting for 3 hours.
Yeah. I think that back in August when you first wrote the article, we didn't know what would happen for the fall for many schools. And now we know that this is kind of a long-term new reality for folks. So you spoke to how you're doing. How are your kids handling this transition?
Yeah, it's interesting. In the spring, when everything switched to online schooling, it was really tough. My daughter grieved for a long time just over the loss of her learning community, her schedule, her independence. being able to go to school and interact with her friends and the teacher that she loves so much. It was really rough. And now it's a very, very different type of online education. There's some regularity to it. She just said this morning that she has new friends. I think interpreting that her class is new friends in her class. And I'm so thankful that even though it's online, she's been able to establish a relationship with her teacher, and she loves her new first grade teacher. So I'm encouraged that way.
I think a lot of conversation in the teaching communities have been concern over whether young people are going to be able to develop relationships with other young people within an online space. So it's really encouraging to hear that your daughter is starting to make some of those connections. Is there anything in particular that you think her teacher or teachers did to support that, or anything that you did at home to help that happen?
Yeah, I think of one thing very specifically, because even on the first day of school, she was resistant. She didn't really want to sit there. She didn't want to have the camera on. But the teachers in that grade level had set up a system where they were going to have family meetings, half-hour family meetings with each family in that first week. And I happened to sign up on the first day of school because I knew that conversation was going to be so critical. And sure enough, in the first 5 minutes of the conversation, it was my husband and I and the teacher talking. My daughter didn't want to be on camera with the teacher even. But then she gradually got up the courage to join. And then she took over the meeting. She talked to the teacher for 25 minutes. And afterwards, right? Afterwards, she said, I just needed to know my place in the class and that my teacher likes me. And it was those things that she was seeking out and she was so concerned about. And once those fears were diminished, yeah, it's been so much easier that way.
Well, it sounds like you were a good model too, because you jumped right in to be part of that classroom community
Right.
when it was offered up. What about you, Daniel? How are your daughters transitioning?
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I think when things shut down, the school closure happened back in March, the system was less structured. And so my oldest, Ava, struggled with that because essentially we were getting assignments and then having to complete them by Wednesday and then by Friday through various apps. And Ava struggled with the lack of structure. Lucia, my youngest, seemed to do better with that. They miss their friends, especially my little one, Lucia, who's very social and just goes up to people and hugs them and, will tell them stories without any context. She's very social. But she did good with like the lack of structure and, checking in and me helping her with work and sort of taking her own time. This year, this year's different. Ava's in third grade. She's self-sufficient. She enjoys the structure of having to be on the Zoom meeting, of doing breakout rooms. Her teacher in third grade allows a 15-minute little like socializing session at the beginning of class. And that has been really helpful for her. She's making connections with different students. They're exchanging gaming handles. I'll talk more about like gaming and socializing and how that's been a godsend for us. And Lucia she's crying every morning. She does not like school. She doesn't like that she can't see her friends in person. She's also really young. Her birthday was on August 31st, so she just turned 6. So she's like the youngest in her class. She really struggles with Zoom, and I think we could all empathize with that because we also struggle with Zoom. She likes to fidget and be up, so it's been really challenging for her. And she said at times that she really dislikes school. We've recently had a breakthrough because what she's figured out is during the breaks, teachers will get 5 or 10 minute breaks. When her teacher gives a break, she's been sticking around and talking with some of the girls, and they formed a girls club, and they do all these things, all these plans that they're going to do after the pandemic, sleepovers and parties and games and playing with their toys and stuff. So that's been a recent development, and we've seen her improve in terms of her capacity to sit through Zoom because she's really looking forward to the break so she can talk to the girls club.
So she has created these online activities with her friends. Is that, when you say sleepovers, I'm imagining they're not actually sleeping over. but are they having parties that are called sleepovers and they're in their jammies and socializing on Zoom?
They're making plans, you know, it's a break. So the teacher will say, all right, kids, we'll be back in 5 minutes. And she has a counter and like music playing, and the kids go off and do their thing. But Lucy and a few of the kids will stay behind, and they'll unmute themselves and like, hey, are you there, so-and-so? And then they start chatting and they show each other's toys, and they're making plans, and they're talking and interacting about their weekend and stuff that's going on. And that has been really important because that's her only opportunity to really socialize with the kids in her class or during these breaks. So she's figuring out when to socialize on her own. And Ava, my oldest, is also doing that in the mornings and then through like gaming, you know, Minecraft and games like that.
Erin, so are you taking the same kind of tactic in transitioning in terms of the socialization aspect of learning and development, or are you taking a different tack?
So similarly, I mean, I think the one difference is that my daughter does have some pre-established relationships that she wants to maintain. So one of the things that we've done, and one of the things she talked about even before school started, she's very concerned about lunch and who she was going to have lunch with. And she said, well, you know, we're probably going to do breakout rooms for lunch. And that hasn't quite worked out. But what we've done is we've connected with other families and done FaceTime lunch dates with her friends so that they can talk one-on-one and just kind of catch up that way. And she's had quite a few friends move out of the community to other places. So there's been a lot of weekend play dates online that way too.
So in the questions that were submitted in advance of this webinar, there are a lot of questions about managing remote learning while working from home. And they were questions related to how to manage the learning schedules when you have multiple kids in the house. There were questions around how do you manage your own work schedule? You both are working from home right now, and as you are managing your child's learning schedule. And if you have more than one child, then there's multiple schedules that you have to manage. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned about how to do that, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Well, one of the things that I've learned is that my work day is, of course, very, very different, as is most people's, right? So one thing that's worked for us is I get up very, very early in the morning, and that is my time before anybody else wakes up to do a lot of my focused work. And then I have to literally print out the schedule for my daughter's school and constantly revisit it throughout the day to make sure that I have a sense of where she's supposed to be when. And she does pretty well during the synchronous time. I don't need to do a lot of monitoring, but I do need to be in the room just in case I need to troubleshoot some sort of a tech issue. And honestly, every once in a while, she'll hide her video so she can come give me a hug in the middle of the day, just a little reconnection. And during the break time, she does want me to get up with her and do whatever the active break is. But there's also certain meetings that I need to attend to during the day as well. I can't constantly be with her. I have the luxury of that my husband is also working from home, so we try to manage it that way. But sometimes she really is on her own. So having that conversation ahead of time with her that you've got to take care of you for this little bit of time. We're going to come back to you. Don't worry. This doesn't mean that you're not the priority. You are. It's just we've got to attend to these other things. And of course, the workday ends up going till late into the evening sometimes. So just trying to help myself remember to be flexible about that and just do whatever I can has helped me.
How about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I think the really helpful thing has been also waking up around 6 in the morning and giving myself a chance to go for a walk or get a workout in, just something that will help me get ready for the day, because I really need that. The days seem to just bleed into one another, and there's not really a work day. There's just work. It exists, and it's this thing that when I have a chance to tackle work, then I will do that. And what happening now in my house is that like my Ava, my third grader, will be in here, and she's, like I said, self-sufficient, and I will check in on her, walking in, how's it going? What are you learning about right now? I'll do like little, like we call them formative assessments, and like, tell me about this, like, you know, division. What did you learn about division? But I'll sit in the kitchen next to Lucia, and I'll try to help her refocus because she's very fidgety. And so one of the things that I'm doing with folks that I have meetings with, and I just let them know, look, I'm next to my daughter. It's loud in my house. I'm going to be on this meeting. I'm going to be muted. And I am going to try to stay as present and focused as possible, but keep in mind I have my first grader, and I tell my first grader, I'm here, I'm present, I'm going to do my best to help you, but I'm in a meeting and I really got to pay attention to what's being said in this meeting. And so both parties know, okay, capacity is limited, and everybody seems to be empathetic. My daughters understand, all of my colleagues understand. I think that's one of the benefits of being in this particular moment in time, is that people understand. And, you know, they will walk into the room, they will ask me questions in the middle of a meeting, and it's okay. So there is no real like balance or anything right now. It's just sort of like, you know, figuring out right now, this is the way that it's working. And like Erin, my day then really begins post 12. After lunch, I then start my work, and I have meetings scheduled till 5. And then once that's over, then it's the asynchronous stuff for my daughters, helping them, you know, complete their homework assignments and upload things like that. So they're long days for sure. And they're definitely challenging, but those little times in the morning for myself, I really value those.
I have heard that strategy over and over again from teachers who have to get ready for their workday, and their workday are with children, that waking up an hour earlier than they normally would to just take care of themselves, to go outside and drink their coffee in peace before they get their workday started, has been very, very helpful. And I think the other thing that you just said, Daniel, that I think is so important is that this moment that we're in right now is such that we have become much more human to one another and with one another. And I think that's really important. I think that is probably one of the silver linings to all of this, is that we have in some ways closed the gap in the relationship between teachers and parents, and we're identifying with one another in ways that we have never done in the past. So all of this sounds great. I want to know from you both, what's not working? Just what is just not working that we might be able to try to grapple with a little bit?
Erin, do you mind if I go?
Oh, go for it.
Okay, so I want to say something important. At least I think it's important. Because of what we're experiencing right now, it's really important for me to not think in like works doesn't work. Because really nothing is really working, but nothing is really not working. You know, we're sort of like, it's like duct tape to like repair a broken window, right? It's like, it's doing its job, and we all can acknowledge that that window needs to be fixed, but we can't do anything about it. And I know that my daughter's teachers are really doing their best to make Zoom and all these apps, you know, take the place of live instruction, or one-on-one instruction, I should say. And some of those apps are working. So I'll say like apps like RazKids has been, and if you don't know what that is, it's like a book library app. It's been extremely important for my daughter, Lucia, who's an emerging reader, because the book will read itself to you, and then you can practice reading it and then record yourself reading it. And that has been really helpful. And she loves having options. And it's one of the things that we know about student engagement, right? Right, Erin, is one of the ways to increase student engagement is to give them options to complete a task. And so apps that allow that, like RazKids, are great. One thing that really maybe could be done better is Zoom. And I have to acknowledge that Zoom was not intended for this purpose. So it's not like a platform for teaching. It's like for meetings, and the host lacks options. You know, it'd be great to be able to do like breakout rooms and see them in a grid, so you could see how students are interacting with one another, or embedding formative assessments into Zoom. But, you know, we're doing the best that we can. And I think one of the things that is A challenge with Zoom, and Erin, you'll definitely understand this, is that the distractions. There's cognitive load is a thing that we talk a lot about in education, and we tell teachers, if you really want your students to understand your directions and the objective of your lesson, limit cognitive load or distractions. Just try to limit those distractions so that students can really focus on what's important to know. You can't do that with Zoom because there's unmuting, muting, kids talking. Right. I hear parents talking in the background about groceries, and it's just like, it is what it is right now. And it's a challenge for my daughter to concentrate. And not that it's not working, it just could be done better. And so I think, again, it's just duct tape.
Yeah, thank you for framing it that way, Daniel. I completely agree about it's not really about what's working and not. It's just about we're doing the best that we can. And one of the things that I'm living with every day is this kind of tension about how hard do I push my daughter in her schooling, because she has great stamina for about an hour, hour and a half, and then she starts to lose steam. And that's usually when the asynchronous work starts. And if you think about a traditional classroom, the social aspects of learning are so intertwined with the academics. Right. Usually they'd be sitting with other children, they'd be working on this task, teacher could keep an eye on how they were moving through the task, seeing how much time it was taking them. And this one, it's suddenly the Zoom is off and there she is on her own again in her bedroom, where she would much rather play with her dolls and take a break from work. So I want to live in a happy, harmonious home as much as possible, especially during these stressful times. So I'm constantly negotiating with her when she can do the work. And I'm constantly reminding myself that asynchronous work, the intention is for it to be independent. So I'm not going to go through and correct everything. I'm not going to go through and make sure it's every I is dotted and T is crossed, that it is what it is right now.
That's a really good reminder of the difference between synchronous and asynchronous that parents should keep in mind. And the asynchronous is intended to be independent. We got several questions about how do you balance helping your child develop the kind of independence they would develop in a school setting with having to be there to make sure that they're engaging in productive ways, particularly when it's asynchronous. Do you have any ideas about that?
Well, I'll say that they are definitely developing independent skills. Seeing my 6-year-old copy and paste a Zoom meeting ID and password into Zoom on her own is something that's amazing to me. She's learned this out of necessity. Like I said, my kids figure out how to do social time through apps and chatting and all of that. So there's some independent stuff that's happening, whether you're being intentional about it or not. And I think it just depends on the kid. Like, like I said, Ava doesn't need a lot. She doesn't need me to be next to her. Lucia does. And so what I try to do is not interact with her after everything that's said. But if I see her losing focus or standing up, then I'll just try to refocus her. So I'm learning how to pull away from her so that she can start regulating herself. And I'm hoping that she's learning. And we have conversations about, make sure that you're at least staring at the screen. That helps you reorient. Or I tell her, ask yourself, what am I doing right now? And just sort of helping her regulate herself. And then that also helps me with meetings.
And just to add to that, I often kind of have to check my own expectations about independence. While I love it when I see her make achievements in those areas. And every once in a while, I'll get a request of, you don't have to be in the room with me. I can do this on my own. And I love hearing that. I also just have to remember that she's young, it's first grade, and we're in a very stressful time. And so I think sometimes she needs me a little bit more than maybe she certainly would in a regular first grade day. And that's okay too.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of something you said, Daniel. It reminds me of the article that you wrote in the summer you know, parents are the original teachers of their children, and that they need to be reminded of that, that there are things that you do at home every day that are teaching your children really important skills. And one of the skills that you talked about, Daniel, is really kind of understanding and regulating and being cognitive about what you are doing in that moment while you are doing it, what kinds of knowledge, skills, and abilities you're enacting at that time. And then a lot of parents also have to think about the fact that learning at home is going to look different than at school. You're both educators, and the way that you're teaching your children at home looks different than when you were teaching in a classroom. And so really thinking carefully about, in everything that we're doing, what are we learning? And being very intentional of giving your children experiences at home that let them think creatively, that give them choices on how to solve problems, and they could be real problems that are at home that they can use their content knowledge and skills to solve it. Really thinking more creatively about what we consider, how we think about what learning is and how it happens. So we only have a few minutes left, and I'm wondering if, you know, as we go forward with school online for the foreseeable future, what kind of nuggets or pearls of advice, last pearls of advice would you give to parents at home working with their kids?
I think something that I would hope everybody remembers is just to be gentle on yourself, to celebrate every little success that you have during the day, and to think long-term. I mean, hopefully this is temporary. And if you think about your long-term goals for your children and your family and focus on those, I think that's going to be really helpful. And the other thing that I want to remember is that I think one of the untapped resources in the situation is other parents.
Mm-hmm.
If we can reach out to other parents, you know, whether it's just a quick text message. I know that classes are generally new in most situations, but if there are ways that we can meet beyond the PTA meeting, just to check in with one another, I think that's really going to serve everybody's mental health, and we're going to feel supported going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your final thoughts about this, Daniel?
I would just say get ready for things to change. You know, just always be aware that things are going to change, and that will help keep a flexible mindset. Refrain from being too hard on yourself. You know, I saw that, you know, there's concerns about like anxiety and stress, and like one thing to consider practicing as this continues is just to pause if you're feeling it as a parent. Mm-hmm. Just pause. You know, you don't have to respond to your child immediately. You could pause and take a breath. That often helps me collect my thoughts and regulate myself. And if that doesn't work, and you do accidentally put some anxiety or stress on your son or daughter, then just have a conversation with them at the end of the day where, you know, you just like remind them, this is really hard, you know, for mom or dad. And I'm sorry that I spoke to you that way, or that happened that way. And, you know, just kind of talk to them about that and let them understand that this is definitely challenging. It's challenging for them. It's also challenging for parents.
Empathy and grace, right? And sharing of ourselves, sharing the challenges and problem solving together. So I want to thank you both for sharing of yourselves and helping our audience members to problem solve the challenges that they're facing at home. I also want to acknowledge all the parents that, like you, are doing their very best to navigate schooling during these uncertain times. As a resource, Center X has been curating a set of home-based teaching resources, which you'll be able to access on, let me see this recording, at the website provided. I also want to remind everyone, well, first I want to thank everyone for tuning in to UCLA Connections. Remember, we're going to get through this through community and resilience, and that you can rewatch and share the conversation by going to ucla.edu/connections. Thank you all for being with us.